empire, melanated empire.
Yeah, peace, love, and coconut oil family. Another one. I know it's last minute, but you know what they say already, Yeah, you don't have no time for awareness for awakening. So I'm sure the family knows all the drama that's going on, and even the Ras still, big up to the bedroom still that even scrutinize the Rasta revival camp. You know what I mean? And ultimately, it has sparked a lot of attention. So tonight we're gonna be reasoning with a good bedroom of mine. You know, some know him as Ras Righteous. Also called KheperAnkh. You know what I mean? So we're gonna ask him some questions in regards to his perspectives about this whole mishap. Well, I don't even know if you want to call it a mishap, but what really going on with this Rasta revivalist thing, you know? So without any further ado, I want to call the bedroom to come in, and bless us with his wise words and his presence. Peace and love, Ras Righteous KheperAnkh. Give thanks for coming through another installment of Melanated Empire. How's everything, my brother?
Peace and blessings, brother. Yes. Pata Atan Rastafari. I give thanks and praise for opportunity to build with you. You know, don't seem like I profile pic coming up then, so I'm just gonna turn on that camera because I'm not hide. You know, just like
Straight up.
that's what the theme is gonna be from. You know, the brethren that I see. But first of all, let me give thanks for life. Give thanks for the many wisdom and understanding that I and I have come through over the years to better know that which path we need to go upon. You know, I give thanks for the guidance of the ancestor, and you know, hope that as we go through, me appeal to the power of the netter to bestow the wisdom of Tahuti upon us, that we may be able to come to true reasoning. You know, I think that there's a little bit of separation, within the different mansions, them, in terms of understanding that we need to, you know, have a platform where we can even come forward like this. We need to be come in more unison, whether we're talking about, um, you know, philosophically, spiritually, economically, sociologically, politically, you know. So many years have already passed when we don't still don't really know exactly where we are going, you know. And that's why we really wanted to come forward and step forward and talk about this thing, because the revival reggae camp, um, they've been under fire recently due to them not really wanting to come and step out and give them true perspective of what them agenda really is, you know. And I can see the hesitation, you know, because coming forward and really being true and upfront about what it is that you are stand for is something that in this society will easily get you, you know, canceled out, as them say, cancel culture and all them things. So get over some of the issue, but yeah, man, as we go through the reasoning, and I hope that we can come to a better realization as to how we really should feel about current events and what we should be actually doing versus what we tend to do as a people. Give thanks.
True, man. Powerful bill so far. One bedroom six finger said, "Is this the Primus and Curry man?" No, this is not.
No, man.
This is not Primus and Curry. You know.
No, man, we not come. No, we not.
Yeah, yeah. And just
No,
by him,
Brazil, no, Parmesan Croy. Parmesan
just by
Croy.
him saying, just
You
by him
want to speak
saying that,
about him, yeah, man?
just by him saying that, I think he actually did, get a whiff of that video of Primus and Croy.
Oh yeah.
In the suburban Rasta.
I'm on been battling with this Serbian Rasta over like a month ago.
Okay.
Like that. Because him and how what and we say Rasta loosely when we talk about this person of a lighter persuasion, to put it lightly, who say that him supposed to have this new perspective and interpretation of iTrod. And when we face him, we're coming on to the Dagger Squad University channel, and which is, I don't know if you know, Garfield Reed. Him a brethren, him Jamaican, come up from Jamaica, I am, by the way, not from Jamaica in terms of that. I mean, I live there, I'm born in the States, but through culture and family and all of them things, we can't switch accent very quick because study with different thing, yo hablo español, me can speak of from that perspective, je parle français un peu, or you can, as far as move around, if you want, if we start to get my actual voice that I need to do in the workspace so that they can fully grasp me and understand who I am and where I come. I can code switch. It's a thing that all Black people can do, but just understand that it's the within the specs of like what that conversation was actually about. Basically the Serbian man came with an overstanding of Rastafari from a purely religious perspective, and you can tell from the way that him speak about it that it's a purely religious perspective.
But isn't that how majority of Rastas view Rastafari, from that purely religious perspective? So is he doing anything different per se?
Yes, he's doing something different, because the thing is that with Rastafari, this is a liberty. We are constantly living it. We are constantly growing, evolving, developing, hiring our consciousness, come from the understanding of multiple perspectives. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some, of course, within the walk, that have, a heavier tie to one way or another and have been driven to complacency. And so, I just say to them, brethren, keep studying, because when you're coming from the perspective that I come, right, I feel like a lot of people that come up in Rastafari that I speak and so I've spoken to, I've gotten experience of it, and then in similar in the practices of a Christian light, and so then basically are taking a Christian faith and painting it black and then calling it Rastafari, but I man believe that's not the way. We can't really get too specific because it varies. I'm on Rasta different from Human Rasta, different from Siaman Rasta, different from Serbian quote unquote Rasta. It all varies. So just when I speak, I can only speak for myself, and I tried. And so in the way for me to see for I tried, I came out of the whole Christian and Bible thing when I was a teenager. And so, from them we started to seek out different sources to find where the actual origin of things are. Because in reality, when we were really walking on the trot at first, we were looking for God, and then I find that the God actually reside in us, and so we don't have a desire or a need to really seek out any type of divine order, because simply for me living my life in a certain way on a certain path, I feel confident in the state that I am, that even if there were some great divine master, so to speak, because for the lack of better words, I think our path could be in cohesiveness with that path, but as I tend to look at spirituality from the lens of Kemetic culture and West African culture, kind of in general. So, and it's only from a place of consciousness and understanding, from a place of scholarship to some degree, more so philosophy. But we can get into that, But really, what we came for here is to really come into an understanding about the revival them.
Facts.
The revival camp them.
Yes, yes. So this brother is really seeing that even those prominent reggae artists, like we all know of them, really are kind of sidestepping away from what the foundational principles used to be or still are of the Rasta movement, in that promoting, we can say, well, according to what the guy said, Batmanism and all them kind of thing there, and lesbian vibes, and you know, what do you think of that?
To be honest, it has nothing to do with me. Not one little bit,
But being that
people that
these guys are prominent and out there in the open and can have an influence even on our children and other people, to some degree, it would have to have something to do with you.
I see that like a little bit of inaccurate, and here's why. Let's be real, family. Homosexuals have been on this planet since ancient times. Okay? Acts and culture was very active in the Greco-Roman period. We all know what was happening in bathhouses. Okay? There's many things that Rastafari can concern themselves with, But I think that this is just another one of them things that we come to. If we have to concern ourselves with, then there's just no possibility of changing anything, or need for, or should we need to change anything? If someone else make another choice, like if Siaman made a choice and wanted to be a certain way, or this or that or the third, I couldn't come to Siaman and judge him. Everybody is on their own trod. With the person who we are speaking of as an artist, I don't really know the name because I'm not really familiar with the music, but Lila, they must say they will come forward on a platform and saying that she like interested in girls and the thing like that, and and then you could see later, that you could see like videos of her kind of acting wild and being very imbalanced, I guess you could call it, and then she talked about how she's going through mental issues and different thing like that, and I support I Empress, because it takes a lot of strength to admit to that you have a mental issue and that you need consultation and help, you know. I think that as we go through, I mean, you can have many opinion upon what that type of lifestyle actually is, but when it comes down to it, it have nothing to do with us, you know. And the only reason that we think that we have something to do with us is because of this thing that we call scriptures, which is really just more opinion designed by man to meet an end. And so by using the scripture, you are charged with meeting that end. And you just stick to it from the heart of hearts. You know, I mean, I always talk about how the reason for this is because the scriptures have been sown into our flesh. You know, our ancestor had it forced upon them. Any way you want to talk about it, you can say that the people, different nations, and them come to it by some other method of movement of them. You know, one king took over this or took over that or whatever. The real reason that it happened is because of bloodshed. There is no way around it. So if we want to act like them books are within the Holy Scriptures are somehow more significant than over knowledge that is on this planet, you know, we just can't see that, because there's many cultures that have come before that book and no less valid. And so
why do you
we have
think?
to question ourselves, and when we just seal up this one point, we really have to question is, where does it come from? Why do we feel that way? And should we keep feeling that way? Or is it time to move forward?
I feel you with that. But as you said, it's sown into our flesh. So, like, basically detaching ourselves from such a book will have to take or be synonymous with removing scales on a fish, really. You know what I mean? And some of our people aren't prepared for such pain. So, this is where the comfort zone comes in and then the stagnancy simultaneously with it. What do you think about it?
I'm a big follower of the conscious community, House of Consciousness, Sonetta TV, and different things like that. One of the phrases that I'm always say is that in any case, and I'm not sure if this is biblically, I believe it does have some sort of biblical origin, and we're not 100% because I feel like the terminology is kind of switched around. But when dealing with any of this information that we come across, we must eat the fish and spit out the bones. And that means in that we cannot take on all the information. And there's always someone that you're going to come across that know more than you, you know? And so I find it reasonable to seek out information, seek out as much information as you possibly can for the sake of education and betterment of yourself. And that you might, in our case, from the Kemetic perspective, seek knowledge and understanding on the level of the Makeru. And that is a relief cutout that is put above every temple from which people from all over the world will come to study the mystery system. And on that relief, it means know thyself, which I think is the most significant thing which we can come into understanding. If you take nothing else away from Kemetic culture, know thyself, you know. And Rastafari, I've been saying this a long time, you know. That's why I say that a lot of the time when the people say that them Rastafari or them Christian or them this, that, or the other. that is based on the Abrahamic faith. You're really Kemetic, but you just don't realize it because you haven't read the information. But once you read it, you find that we all connected. And that's not a mistake. It was a tool used to divide and conquer us. But I man say it's time for unify.
True, man. True. So, in regards to the Rasta festival, going right back there. So, are you really saying that the bedrooms them have no reason to act up or get on the way that they're behaving because those artists are portraying that sort of lifestyle kind of thing? Are you saying that?
I don't want to say no reason. Every man entitled to his opinion, you know. In my view, from everything that I see from the reggae revival camp, you know, them coming away them to be less traditional and be more open to the current state of the world, while also overstanding the past and bringing them things to light which are more significant, you know. Take like you know, I'm not sure if it technically a KheperAnkh pyramid is part of that because them kind of come with a different feel. Maybe someone in the chat can clarify that if you're actually within the reggae revival camp, you know. But the main fire from which we hear is towards like artists like Chronix or Protege or Jesse Royale got a bit of heat because of them Santa Claus video and put out, and there's different like people that are within the revival camp themselves that have a lot of light and, you know, and a different thing, you know, because Rastafari truly burn Christmas, you know, burn a lot of them thing, anything that of Babylon system them a burn, you know. So with someone like, you know, KheperAnkh Pyramid, you can really hear in his lyrics that him speaking about the true next level movement of our people toward an end goal, which is true just knowledge of self. One of his lines in him music, him say something like look up in the morning. Oh no, or rise up in the morning and then see the sunrise, and me call it Kheper. And I'm gonna say, oh yeah, and then they will say that many are brethren bear the cross, but we know the Ankh is better. You know, him have kind of like a flow that really actually is like talking about true, you know, scholarship, you know, real true like philosophical perspective that, you know, a lot of us can really value from. But then you have to actually go and do the research yourself to determine what it is and what actually is meant and what actually should be for you on an individual basis, you know. But I do think it's high time since we come together, you know, because I feel like a lot of these truths that we already know about have shown we've been shown the truth over and over again, but we still just stick to our hardest hearts because it's so sewn into our flesh to do so. But I don't think, you know, this is the information age. It's time for us to be reborn.
Facts, bro. Facts, bro. Powerful, man. Yeah, because to be honest, I see it like it's not even really called for. Because as you said, those in the reggae camp don't go by the traditional ways. And that was one of the contentions of the bedroom, saying like, you know, so many elders that go through so much, you know, for Rasta, and then for now for you to come and start moving like that.
We're talking about Lion Trod.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And I see the pain that him feeling, you know, because that is part of the problem is that, you know, because them are technically kind of like figureheads because they're at the head of the reggae movement, you know, in terms of like monetarily, you know, and in terms of the message that they're representing. To not take a certain stand in one way or the other is not the way of Rasta man in recent in well, I wouldn't say recent history, you know, let's say within the last like 50 years or so, you know, towards the latter end of those 50 years, it will become a lot more open. Whereas prior, you know, it was very closed off, and this is the way of the Rastafari. This is what we want to say that this mean, and this is what the interpretation of the Bible is, and this is what El Selassie is to us, and this, you know, it was a lot more like very strict and set forward of this is what we do, preach, believe, say, everything, you know. But I think it's becoming kind of like a more looser translation these days, and so it's kind of hard to still define, you know. But I think that it's really just because, you know, people are just coming in more so into knowledge and are wanting to remove them things that are still holding us back, you know. But that is to be revealed. Who knows? But bottom line, when people are within the revival camp, them have a certain authority, whether them want it or not, that shows that, you know, they represent us publicly. You know, Rastafari is a private thing. You know, it's your trod. You know, it's your liberty. You know, and so when you see something like, you know, them not being specific as to them feeling when it comes to homosexuality, or want to flip out ITAL and call it, you know, vegan or plant-based or whatever, even though the Rastaman, the original vegan, you know, there are all these different things about, you know, the way in which them supposed to be on a path, you know, and then or representing, you know, even, you know, Senzamina as the focus, you know, and or making the herbs as the focus, and the only herb that you smoke is the one that you smoke, and that's the one that you know, put in the forefront as the most important thing, when it's not entirely that, you know. Herbalism is something that stemmed from the continent, from the motherland, you know. So, and it's present in so many different perspectives, primarily in West Africa. You know, a lot of our overstanding, and, you know, I come to find that, you know, when I studied a lot of different things, but we can certainly go into that. I have a ton of books behind me that I can recommend that we all, you know, that we all partake in, because there's just so much knowledge out there. There's so many different perspectives that we can consider, you know.
But for some apparent reason, we seem to just be fixated on this one particular one. You know what I mean?
Right.
And over these years, it has brought us nowhere. As
Right.
a people, I mean, can't we, like,
it's time to move on, family, you know. We're not, you know, this isn't Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, we don't need to have like a deity come up and show up and destroy a whole place simply because they may do something that's different from what them agenda was. Come on, family, we're smarter than this. We're smarter than this.
But at the same time, if that was the case and he is all knowing, wouldn't he have known that was going to happen already?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so, you know,
omnisciency.
Yeah, but then when certain individuals, like my bedrooms, read them kind of thing, you know, being really vehement Christians, they would be like, you know, there's some kind of reason or explanation for that, you know, because there is no possible way that you can.
Are you a Christian apologist or you're a Rasta apologist? Either way, a deity, if it was truly a deity, a real deity, them don't need for you to make an excuse for them, because them exist outside of time and space. So why do we need to make excuses for God?
But these cultures sort of teach that these deities came within time and space to actually make themselves apparent to mankind.
Well, that would depend on which one we're talking about, you know.
Of the 2,500?
Well, if we're talking about, I mean, here's the thing. The way that, like, you know, Africans relate to deities is different than what, you know, Western let's call it, theology relates to deities, you know. And you can see the lasting impression of African theology on various cultures. And if you know, I that is what I have done primarily in our chart, is just study different cultures from different perspectives, from different colors of people, you know. And when you really start to study something, like you can study like Hindu, you know, you can study Buddhism, you can study Shintoism, you can study Vodun, you know, you can study, you know, Akan and Yoruba practices, and you can find similarities in all of them. Why? Because it was Kemet, it was in Kemet that we came to a general understanding of the divine, and that there are certain forces of nature which determine the narrative and determine what it is that we speculate the universe to operate under. You know, what you really have to understand is that, you know, Kemet provides a bottom line, baseline understanding which you can build bricks upon. You know, you can establish your foundation, and then you will find that all of these different things are connected. Unfortunately, I did it the hard way. I was studying many different cultures from all over the place. And then, luckily, I stumbled upon the teachings of a brother named Ankh Ras KheperAnkh. And I have an interview with Muta Baruka. This was the first conscious video of the like that we see on Sound Editor TV, and which them go through and break down all of the various interconnectivity of spirituality in general, and how the Rastafari trod, and why them Awafi trod, and then why, you know, the Kemetic trod, and why them Wafi trod, and what, you know, the real, some of the real like master teachers. You know, I see Muta Baruka as a master teacher, you know, and then say burn the Bible, you know. And you know, I would start from there, started to watch cutting edge, you know, radio a lot. And you know, I had already been studying up until that point, and so it was just like all of a sudden, bing, everything started making sense. And then from there, then, you know, there's certain people that will, you know, further be able to allow you to deepen your scholarship. You know, Brother Garfield Reed, him have a lot of good things to put forward. Gabario Saze is another great brother that have a lot of information to provide. You know, Anthony T. Browder have great, you know, true, you know, study from an archaeological perspective. I just finished reading this book, Black Genesis, you know, and that was a recommendation from another brethren, Shaka Atmos. You know, him have like a very, him come with fire. You know, you would think him a Rasta. You know, him coming with that true, like, you know, animosity, like real, like fire from, you know, from the sake of, you know, Black youth faith type, you know, strong, like one for you, you know, put this information on your face because I'm tired. And I really think that that's what is coming down for Black people in general. We're tired of being lied to. We're tired of it. And so we're going to seek the truth for ourselves. And when we find that truth, it only brings us closer together.
Facts, man. Facts, man. So, yeah, I mean, in regards to the whole humbug with that revival thing, I mean, it just completely makes no sense. And we have more serious things, serious matters we can attend to, even
so many more serious things we can attend to. Yes,
you know what I mean? But it's been years. A lot of these master teachers and Black scholars have been trying to get black people away from that religious corpus called the Bible. And while it is seen on one hand that quite a few of them have been successful, it still has a major grasp on, I can say, more than half of the population of the black race.
Yes,
And I believe
70%. I would say.
say again?
I would say 70%.
Yeah,
70%.
yeah. And to me, that spells stagnancy. I mean, that has made the black race remain stagnant. We try to justify passages in the Bible rather than learning new literature and 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 new things, whereby if we take responsibility in even trying to better this place and this world that we're living in, and not wait, to show symptoms of the savior complex, not wait for someone to come and make everything right, but be responsible and say that you're going to play your part in trying to correct everything and helping the race ascend, seeing we have been in a state of decadence for all these years. You know what I mean?
Yes,
I just find that book is just really guilty of doing that, all because of a first, second century religious sect. And we still don't know de- definitively, if it was really this individual, Joshua, or was it Serapis Christus, really, you know? Um,
unfortunately, it's irrelevant.
yeah, but then they are making it relevant because they give it their power. They actually make it relevant because now you're actually waiting for this dude to return,
Yeah.
you know. And in all our days, we have never seen anyone come from the sky unless he's on a plane or something, you know. So,
Maybe they've already come on a plane.
no.
Early eyes, Selassie I. Ja. Ras KheperAnkh.
Ah,
Like but here's the thing, here's the thing with that, I think I'm coming because that's my, root, and that's how I, see the way. But I think that a lot of people take the divinity thing a little bit too seriously because them have been trapped by the guise of that which the Christian perspective have put upon us. We take God to be this thing that has to be a being experience of time and space that controls all the many things that happen in this universe, and all you need to do is utter in order to be able to have it. All of them need to just have a tiny utterance in order to be able to bring things into existence. But I say to you, that is our stuff. The concept, I mean, if you would just take just a moment to look in, just even see, there's a book I'm gonna pull up called of Egyptian mythology, a book of Egyptian mythology, which I'm gonna recommend, which I'm now reading for the second time. And in this book, it really breaks down the various different stories which have occurred over time to show the different perspectives of ancient Kemet. And because really what happened in Kemet, it's a dynasty, it's a huge, empire that was on the earth for thousands of years, and so by that regard, there have been, translations and changes and, different interpretations and all of that have passed through. But there's basically like 4 or 5 like main creation stories that come out of Kemet that are primarily utilized within the culture. And so this book, oops, I almost just played it. This book, I don't know if you probably can't see the screen. So I don't know how to make it bigger. Let's see if I could bring it up a different way.
so that's the book.
Robert Perazzi is the Parizzi. Robert Perizzi is the author on that title of Egyptian mythology, and it really breaks down the different perspectives to come to you can really just see how the how the netter are formed and how they can are actually the concept of the netter is a makeup of multiple what we call netaru, which is consists of a figurehead, which we consider to be Ra, as well as there's different stories that play out different ways. Sometimes Ra come into existence of himself. Sometimes, Heka, which is a deity that is basically the great energy that set thing in motion. But basically it's a matter of a movement of different things from within time and space. A movement of this particular deity represents the sun, this particular deity represents water, this particular deity represents the earth, and by these different things forming one after the other, it's the same way in which from Genesis you can see this one figure, Jehovah, making these different things come into one after the other. It's the same thing, and you can see it if you just all you just have to do is just study just one book. That's what a lot of people really struggle with, is that they don't know where to start. Start anywhere. It doesn't matter where you start,
as long as you do.
As long as you do. Yes.
Yeah.
As long as you start, it doesn't matter where you start, what person you start with. A great place to start. I'll take this one too. Okay. If you're just in the Christian mindset and you're just trying to understand what it is, the true history of Christianity, you have no concept of like what it is that it was. All you have is the Bible. All the things that you've read is the Bible purely, and you want to stick to only the Bible. I implore you to just read a history of Christianity, because then you can really come to an understanding. Here's an example. There's hundreds of these types of books. You can't really see it because of the screen. But this is History of Christianity, Volume 1, Beginnings of 1500, by Kenneth Stott Latore. There's, one of the real things when I was first coming into Rastafari was this book, which I'm sure many of you might be familiar with, Barry Cervantes, Rastafari, Roots and Ideology. Really strong and powerful book that has a lot of different concepts that are significant with the Rastafari movement in general. If you're ready to step away, or at least even be enticed to step away, pick up this book, 7 Little White Lies: The Conspiracy to Destroy the Black Self-Image by Jabari Osai.
Jabari, okay.
Yes. That is another great book, which, I've only perused through. I have to go back and read it again. This is one of them books where you really have to come into true understand. What did he just say there? But it's a page turn. You'll flip through, you can't even help yourself. This is Garfield's Read book, and I'm looking forward to reading this. Another good one, Misconceptions and Misinformation of the Black Hebrew Israelite.
Yeah.
I don't know if you really realize it, but when you are coming with this Bible and painting it black and calling it your own, all you sound like is a Hebrew Israelite. Is that Rastafari? Is that what His Majesty told us to do with the book? Or is just supposed to take the wisdom within and move forward?
Good question.
If you want some information, this book has been marked by scholars as being pseudo. I don't really feel that way. for a lot of reasons. Okay, there's a lot of great history in this book. There is, them theory that them have, when them want to, them call it the Osiris Dionysus theory, and in saying that that is the reason as to why it cannot be looked at as true scholarship because it's presenting a philosophical ideal. This whole that word pseudo, it really
See the number on
separates the boys from the men, but it also keeps them and it keeps people honest. But when it comes down to it, it doesn't mean you just shut the information out.
Yeah, but that's what it does automatically.
Right. And there's certain things where pseudos definitely applies. Also a big fan of their channel, and Ras Squad, and them really break down like the true meta netter and like the actual what the various archaeologists call the hieroglyphics, the actual literal writing of the Kemetic people. They break it down and talk about that kind of like specificity to come into the understanding of what it is and how to read and what you can actually achieve and what things actually mean and what we can actually stake claim to versus what is just, us having feel good theology to replace the Christianity.
Yeah, because like you need something to replace it with. Really, that's why a lot of people, when they discover new information and possibly new spiritual concepts, instead of dealing with it independently, they seem to carry over the Christian narrative and the Christian ways into this new concept. I mean, perhaps just giving it a different title, a different label, but they sort of pretty much do the same thing, just under a different title. So I believe, as Garfield said, we need to drop all labels, really. I mean? Because majority of even the Rastafari community will say, you Ras righteous, you KheperAnkh, you ain't no real Ras. Like, you know what I mean? Your perspective is diverse from, and I guess that's the same thing Chronics and them going through, really, because they come in with their own definition of Rasta,
Sure.
So yeah, so it's like it's sort of an ambiguous vibe when you look at it subjectively. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's really ticklish, man, to be honest. And with the post-traumatic slave syndrome that is upon us, I don't know when even we as a people, as a race, really can seriously overcome. I mean, there was this global awakening going on, and it still is going on, but not to the degree that it was a few years ago. I think this whole jab thing, has sort of made us confused and perplexed, and sort of put us back a few more steps, But despite that, the energy in the planet is continuing its agenda, really, and more people are still waking up and questioning. It's just that those fetters need to be removed from the mind, and it takes a lot of reading, because I'm sure you've heard the quote, if you want to hide anything from a black man, just put it in a book. They refused us from reading for many years, so now we have
for a reason.
We have the opportunity now, especially being in the age of information. There is so much to read, and the more you read, the more your mind expands. So I encourage our people to do more reading, to be scientifically literate. And deal with STEM, really, because spirituality is only one half, just one half, just one part of the scale. And the other scale is we really have to put in that work. We have become the sacrificial generation, but then we need to put in the work so those after us won't really get it too dread on them. You know what I mean? But I do think these prominent reggae artists that are at the center stage should, in some way, I don't know how, look to bring about this new understanding, and perspective really
Mm-hmm.
of
Behind the lines.
the
Yes.
movement, bring
Mm-hmm.
it more open. And perhaps that will not give them sales because, the mindset and the energy of the young ones is always a woman thing or a girl thing. And if not
That's
that,
part of the problem. That's
yeah,
part of the problem is the sales aspect of it, is that you don't really know if a person is doing something because they'll actually feel it in them heart if they're just trying to get money. Because in reality is we all need some money, some way, shape, form. I mean, you can disconnect yourself from the system as much as you want, but when it comes down to it, you do have a family to support. You know, and if you
that's
don't have a family to support, you must support yourself. And if you don't have to support yourself, you may have to support an elder. You know,
mhm.
stemming from the thing about whether we might consider I and I be a Rastafari. That's them choice. I mean, when I we have an old saying, many are called, few are chosen, and I don't seek to place judgment on any man or tell them what or who they are or drive them in one direction or the other. The only thing I can do is speak for myself and I trod
And present the information.
and present the information and fact check that information. That's the only thing that I can do, you know.
And the rest is on
So,
them.
and the rest is on them, you know. Everyone is on their own trod, and we can't say that this one particular thing over another is the way that determines who you are within a Rasta or whatever. You know, the only time that I ever will come with true fire is if I see a colonizer. I know a colonizer when I see one. This is what I tell to the Serbia and them. I know a colonizer when I see one. You're not gonna trick me and tell me that your perspective is somehow more valid than me, mine, my ancestor, or anything like that. And so, if you want to try to test me, trust and believe, I'm going to break down your systematic thinking. And as you saw, I didn't even have to show my face
Mhm, mhm.
on the last episode of Wednesdays with the Rastas, because there are many, many black men that won't step forward and will say that this particular way of looking at things does a disservice to our ancestors. And
Sure.
I mean, you can see that Primus and Croy even himself, even he's like a grandfather to me. You
Yeah,
know, and
yeah.
he's just a man that is speaking about the religiosity of them things that was taught to him. and the
So,
book that he has been reading his whole life and can quotes from so literally and has applicable perspective to it.
to the point
I
where
have more respect for Primus and Croy than me have for that little one. No one can say that him this, that, or the other.
yeah, because Primer's been reading that book for as long as he can
Yes,
remember, to the
man.
point where you would even believe its scriptures to go and vandalize the people statues
He's
in
a great
America,
preacher.
you know?
He's a great preacher. That's all it boiled down to. He's
Mm,
good at presenting the concept of the information within the word. And so, hey, more power to him. What I
yeah,
don't like is when someone wants to come up on the scene and then turn this thing, which I and I hold true to I heart and I culture and I anciency and I anciency and come to an understanding of the roots from a connection from when we're talking about Komina and who we're talking about Vodun, when we're talking about anything and them having to do with an Orisha. And when we're talking about, you know, coming and finding our true selves in that which we come from our actual DNA that determines where we actually come from. When we actually come into true understanding, the only time that we're gonna call you out if we can see the foolishness in front of I and and so, hey, if you think that makes me not a Rasta, that is your judgment. But even, I mean, see a man will come out in some time and say that I'm not a Rasta, but You know, I don't really believe him either. And I promise you, see, man, we're gonna bring this up every time I come on your channel because we don't believe you. We don't believe you. You eat ital, you grow them locks, you speak out them culture, you're against the patriarchy, you know, you believe in roots and herbalism, but you're not Rasta? Yeah, right, brethren.
So isn't those descriptions of the original man? I mean, we give the original man a
Yes,
title, but
connection to the
in the
original man and having any type of idealism towards that original man.
but in the contemporary understanding of it, to be a Rasta really is one, you have to see Haile Selassie as God, as that divinity of being a Godhead, right?
Yes, but what type of God is my question. What type of God? There's God. The term God is a Germanic term.
True.
Under what terms do we define a God? If we define it according from the ancient perspective, then we can see that if a pharaoh were to take the throne and become a Nesut, then that would mean that they are a spokesperson to the masses of the divine way. And so I see no difference in Haile Selassie. You know, he's a figurehead that came up from natural path to take a throne, to change the will and ways of his people, and showed many works showing what his power actually is. And whether you want to call it divine or not, that's up to you. But I'm just saying that if you loosen the seals, loosen the groundwork which determines what a deity actually is, if you make it into a looser concept of overstanding and overstand the greater symbolism that is within the Bible, within the Per Emeru, within Obeya, within any number of spiritual practices, then once you loosen those terms, you will find that anybody can be divine. It's because when it boils down to me, it comes down to Ba and Ka. Ba being the physical form. Well, you know what? That's a complex concept. So let's just say Ba and Ka, lower self, higher self. Okay. Understand that the higher self is an interconnectivity between all of us. I and I. It's sewn into our culture and we don't even realize. I and I is Ba and Ka. And so when you come into that understanding, you will find that the divinity of these different people who keep coming back, whether you want to call them a Messiah, whether you want to call them Christ, whether you want to call them the anointed, whether you want to call them a demigod, whether you want to call them any number of different names and perspectives. You know, it could be an opener of the way, so to speak. You know, it could be, anything where someone has a certain level of chi within them. You know, that the avatar which is walking amidst us seems a little bit different than everybody else. They seem to walk on a different wavelength. They seem to be thinking on a different wavelength. They seem to be able to express the attributes of that wavelength better than anyone that you have come across. Is that divine?
I would like to think so. But in my view, I don't see, because the divine we're speaking about, right? Uh, it's kind of tight, because when we try to broaden the definition, right, which in its own right can be understood, it's still coming like an apologetic kind of way. You see what I mean? The reason I say that is because while we say, okay, God is a Germanic word, and but we still know what category or what definition of God, on what scale we're referring to it, you know. And because I no longer share the perspective and see him as divine in that sense of being that God, you know, and seeing that is one of the criterias to really be, you know, a Rastafari, that is why you would still find me saying, like, no, no. Because I honestly see him as an ancestor, right? Uh,
Mm.
as a man, really, because while there was good things he did, there were still questionable things that he did,
For sure.
as with many of our ancestors, and that would show still in being a man, you
Pause. Just pause right there, just in that
know.
one particular statement. When you're looking at an individual, the reason why you want to think of them to be a perfect person, be a perfect way, be this, that, and the third, is because of the idea of who Jehovah and Yeshua are.
Facts.
So if you look at it with the lens, with the forced upon European lens of that a deity must be defined according to these particular set pieces and characteristics and definitions, then yeah, you of course am not going to be a godlike person, you know. But just remember that the original Trinity is Father, Mother, Child.
Facts.
And so coming into that overstanding, to a child, I am God.
Mm-hmm.
So realize that we disassociate the concept of what a deity is over and over and over again due to these stipulations that have been set in place by the oppressor. So when it comes down to it, are we not just limiting ourselves by saying that this particular person does not fit the mold of God? Who are we? How would I know what God is? How would I know? How would I know who she is? We don't really know,
Mm-hmm.
and can't know.
So then, again,
And
it will
there's no
come down
guarantee
to
that
your.
even in death that I will know.
So it all comes down again to even your perspective on what you understand God to be.
My understanding of God. Here's the thing. Let me ask you a question. You know, I know you're interviewing me, but let me ask you a question. Okay. Do you see a cohesiveness between forces of nature?
Yes.
Do you find that there's certain energy that surrounds individuals, whether you want to call that chi, whether you want to call that, um, you know, aura, you know, whether you want to call that sauce
Mhm.
for,
Yeah.
for the back when you can see when somebody got the sauce.
Well,
You know what
yes.
I mean?
Every individual does actually possess an aura and that energy around them. At times it's noticeable, or at times it's very, dormant. But there are
Mm.
times in different phases,
Sometimes it's
different
dim and
frequencies.
sometimes it's strong.
Facts.
Yes, right, right. You know, I've had many people, you know, approach me and say that I can see your aura, you know, and you know, it's when you represent yourself in such a way and you really are not afraid anymore. I mean, you know, I'm sure you probably can glow.
Mhm.
You know, I've certainly felt energies when I move in places. Do you think that the dead are gone when them dead, or do you think that they are still able to commune with us in some way, shape, or form?
Um, According to an African spiritual concept, that of that being came, it say that the soul has 9 parts. Some people say 7,
Mm,
right? Um,
okay.
and in that understanding, really, it's like perhaps they can be gone, but then an aspect would really remain. Communication can happen via dreams, right? Because I've had both a sister and brother who passed away, and both of them did visit me in dreams. You know,
Rest in
um,
power.
um, in the transition stage, right? With what I know so far, what I've read, what I've um, meditated upon, the spirit or the soul of that unitary particle during the time of transition actually becomes one again with source, and source is everywhere. Okay.
Nothing
um
created or
in
destroyed.
source being everywhere and they becoming part of source, then obviously they will always be present.
Mm.
You know what I mean? But in the sense of perhaps spirits or ghosts looking, no, not really on that level. um
So Duppy don't exist to you.
Say again.
So Duppy don't exist to you.
um I will say there are evil spirits, there are energies that you can manipulate.
Okay.
um but I don't really vibe with the, like, for lack of a better way to put it, like to say like a ghost coming and haunting you and them kind of thing. I don't really, no. I feel the energy can, you can manipulate the energy to perhaps for something bad to happen to the individual. You see what I'm saying? But then to say like he's a literal ghost kind of thing, nah, I don't really know.
So if I told you that I was haunted, then you wouldn't believe me.
Um So again, like the situation says, we come down to your experience. You see,
On an individual basis. Okay.
yeah. An
You're
individual.
playing your game wisely, man, Rod. You're playing your game wisely and stepping lightly and and playing chess and all that. But hey man, I mean we can, there's some things for us to kind of think on. But you know,
So, what
if
was
you
the purpose of
believe in a
asking the
one
question?
energy and a returning back to the source not being of divine nature and essence, but could possibly be, it seems as though you're more so agnostic if we were going to try to break it down into an exact term based upon the pseudoscience of theology, we'll say.
uh, it's just that the understanding or the perception I have of the God or the Creator, right? I don't think it allows room to single out characters,
Mm,
which basically comes down to when you said that anybody can be God, or you check it, or anyone is a God from the time they carry themselves properly or what have you. You know what I mean? So it doesn't single out and say like, there is this one, and and the source had to come. If you see what I'm saying? So because I view it as we are all unitary particles of that same divine consciousness, you know what I mean? If you want to call it divine, well, yeah, then we're all divine because we're all particles from it. But the divinity,
To me, that's what it is, though. Are you saying that that's not what Rastafari believe?
I'm saying the divinity that Rastafari stems from, right, is the single out monotheistic God concept where there is just this one high up and everything else is below. You
Is that
know,
what we actually are, or is that what they say that we are?
um, majority of the, or perhaps all of the denominations seem to follow that same route. All the denominations within the movement of Rastafari, that this
God
particular
is
figure.
exterior of self, that concept
Say
itself.
again?
Just the concept in itself that God is exterior of self.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when we come across Rastas like yourself, that will lean to sort of my perspective, because that's the sort of perspective you share. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It would seem as, but no, like you're not really that, because we esteem this man above everything else to the degree where
But I mean, but we're kind of splitting hairs here because you can see that that is not necessarily true. For example, Ole Emmanuel I, you know, Charles Edwards had a certain level of divine essence within him and was recognized as the Black Christ, and a hand that touched him that was from His Imperial Majesty. And I know this is no longer you, but coming to an understanding, anybody who ever interacted with Haile Selassie, whether come from the perspective of seeing this figure that was crowned King of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering land of the tribe of Judah, and or believing that in their hearts, or not, every single individual that interacted with him felt a certain presence that them could not really describe. You know, that's I used to defend His Imperial Majesty on so many levels, and I can break it down as to why I see divinity with His Imperial Majesty. But I do think that to say that God is one way or the other, that's the work of the oppressor. We can't define God. We will never know what God is. We can only look at it from the human perspective of what we think God might be. And so you say God is exterior of us and a divine force that exists outside of us. I say that God is within us and can be manifested on an avatar level within each of us, um, depending upon the particular moment. Or, you know, or maybe it's both. Maybe it's neither.
Hmm. I kind of go with your second definition, but I still see it as within and without,
Yes.
right?
Yes, sir.
Within and without. Like you say, it can be both
God
of
is
them.
in all things. Yes.
In all things, because in the spiritual concept of ancient Kemet, like the Neter, which is what they mistranslate to God, really call it
Mm-hmm.
deity, is within all things natural. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? And natural meaning not really man-made, you
Right.
know, to that level, but everything natural within the universe. Let's put it that way.
There's certain things that you can build to be used as a divine rod to move that energy in a certain way. And I think that's really what the Kemetic people really um, innovated. I wouldn't say mastered, they innovated the concept.
Mm,
And you can see a lot of the truth of that and overstanding of, you know, the Merkut pyramid,
yeah,
you know, of the
because in my
Herod, you know, and all the different imagery that, from the Sphinx to the, just the way of how, in which animism is represented in a concept. You know, there's a lot of different things which you can see that we overstood the forces of nature have a direct impact on us in
Mhm.
this life. and whether we look to the stars and define it by astrology, or we just focus here on this earthly plane, we can see a divine essence which must be behind it. You know, and some people will say, "Oh, well, that's pseudo. That's crazy. That don't make no sense." Well, what's crazy? Define crazy for me. Every single person have a different perspective. For one person, I'm crazy. For another person, I'm completely sane.
But then again, while we all have perspectives and opinions and possibly beliefs, they need to be tried and tested to see if they actually do stand, or is it just us
Do they
just going off
need
in
to
the
be?
mental?
Do they need to be? Or do we just think they need to be because we're coming from a scientific perspective and thinking that science governs the concept of what it is that determines truth?
But science really means to know. The etymology of science just means to know, really, which is why I said those beliefs, because you cannot just believe something and then it doesn't warrant anything, you know. Um, okay, you believe that the earth is flat. Okay, what does that, has it been
Well, yeah, but
proved?
there's scientific proof to determine that that is not the case. And so, notwithstanding, we can't come to a rational conclusion based upon the data which is provided to us, because we can't actually travel around the earth to determine if it's whether it's flat or not. In terms of that, like you can't like walk from one place to another to determine that it is flat, but you can see if you are in a jet and flying above it, that you have to, that as you are flying across, you know depending upon the height at which you are, you can see a curvature. you know you can see, we do have things like satellites to determine whether what we are seeing is actually there. And then when a flat earther come forward, then we're going to say something like, "Oh, well, that's just a trick by NASA," and
Yep.
"Oh, that's just an illusion from the ice wall," or "Oh, this is the reason why, this is the way that this is determined that this particular thing is still true." When you break it down in that way, the only thing which I see is that cannot be actually defined within the terms of science is the God concept. And I mean, certain things have been determined to be a fallacy. When you start to bring things into question that has a Christian apologist perspective, where you are saying things like, is the absence of evidence of absence, and these different philosophical perspectives which seek to change the narrative in order to push ideas and focus in their favor. There's certain there's a way in which you can just kind of look at these things and say, "Oh, well, is this really true?" I mean, true in the terms of that we can't taste, touch, feel it to say it to or deem it to be rational. I mean, in that sense, I guess it's untrue. Sure. We can't prove any of these figures in the Bible existed. We can't prove that there's actual power that in a particular individual, like Tehuti, in terms of writing, in terms of being an architect of creation and being the master of the book, or that to be associated with Shashat. We can't prove that these things actually exist. And within the Kemetic lens, we see them as just characteristics of divine that are symbolic, that are not actually true beings anyway. So that's we've already come to that understanding. But since and since Christianity comes from that root, then we can then in turn look at the Bible from an astrological perspective and see the different things within divine mathematics that determine that this particular symbolism is actually not the resurrection of Jesus, but then is actually a ascension and descension of the sun. There's a lot of different things which you can correlate and find these true paths to be able to determine. And if you really want to get into that, I suggest you read some Dr. York. But but is that relevant? Is it really relevant to make things make sense? I know that Brother Polite is under some extreme heat. Some of the scholarship which he come forward with is still valid, and I still take it to be valid.
Yes, so do I, to be honest.
I'm on respect the artist. I'm on respect the scholar. It's not about their personal life.
True.
And one of what did him say is, we are all guilty of trying to make sense of nonsense. Don't make sense. Don't try to make sense of nonsense, family.
It's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time. And also, don't try to force people to change. Also, a waste of time. Give them information. Because when it comes down to it, another thing that we are all guilty of is cognitive dissonance, which is a psychological term, which is defined as essentially that anytime that someone attacks your sense of political perspective, spiritual perspective, emotional perspective, all the various aspects of the psyche which we, have developed in term to be human. Anytime when someone tries to shake your foundation and say, this is wrong, you must go search this, your immediate reaction is to say, no way. You don't know nothing. You don't know me. You don't know me. You don't, that just is, it's a cop out. There's no other way to say it. It's a cop out. We try to say whatever we can in order to keep our foundation strong so that we don't have to be defined by the terms of another because we are scared.
So we don't have to change.
You don't have to.
So they remain in the comfort zone, really, just to, because to elevate from where you have been for quite some time, it takes some bravery, it takes some courage, to be honest. You step it into unknown waters. So
I'm on give thanks that the ancestors have pushed me in a certain direction to move away from them concepts, especially while I was a teenager.
Facts, bro.
There's no way to
define how me as a teenager. It happened to me 20s, late 20s. Took some time, but then, I give thanks for where I am presently, to be honest. You know what I mean?
All we can do is give thanks.
Growth. Yeah, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but I think I'll bring the show to a close, really. I guess we're going to continue that build all the time. You know what I mean? I want to give thanks for even you coming in. I know we wouldn't have stuck on the subject matter, but we did go into different realms, which also needed to be elaborated upon. So I don't know if you have any closing words, so we can seal it up there.
Yeah, man. Uncle Ba'at, people. We must seek life in balance. We must. Another thing that I often will say is, Ras KheperAnkh. We must have life through divine light that we may come to a new rebirth. We must, allow ourselves to be open so that when we see the signs that are come before us, we don't just say, that guy's just crazy. Or, I'm perfectly fine being the way I am. Or,
to each his own.
To each his own, yeah. Ignorance is bliss, family. There's all this, sometimes when you're coming into this knowledge, I can think of myself as man, would I have been happier knowing less?
That's a deep question.
I don't know that I would have been, because I feel like this this part of I trod is like destiny. You know, I was destined to find that way. But it was because of the support that I had coming up that really, pushed me in this direction. You know, because instead of when I went to a preacher when I was very young, I was starting to notice a lot of things in the Bible that didn't make sense and started to get interested in reading other sources. Usually within that conversation, a preacher will say, stop reading. Don't go there. Don't look at it. Don't do it. Don't, you're going to, the Holy Spirit is going to forsake you and this, that, and the third. No. My preacher said, keep reading, son. And so that's what I say to you. If you have a little tidbit of information and you read it and you are inspired, I pray that you continue to read more and develop more. Everlasting health and strength to all. Don't just don't, close up the book and say, that's it. There's nothing else left for me here because this is going to bring me away from my faith. If you have true faith, it will not bring you away. It'll only strengthen that faith which you already have. Because then you will find that that faith is tied to a history which is infallible. So I man give thanks to the ancestor them for giving me, the strength to go through these things and be able to move forward. I give I give thanks to Jah Almighty that have given me the wisdom and understanding to know the way in which I need to go and follow it without question. Because or I shouldn't say without question, follow it with question. Because you can only know by asking questions.
By asking questions. Critical questions of that.
Critical questions, indeed. So with that, I say, Pata, Atanra, Rastafari.
True,
thanks for the build.
Give thanks again, bro. Give thanks again. Hopefully, we're going to do this again sometime soon.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And thanks for even the full family who even, was present with us. Even Piccolo's son, big up yourself, says he's tough, and always have some words of encouragement, And peace to everyone else who is going to watch the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, family. While we're building numbers, getting the information, and rising the consciousness. So, peace and love. KheperAnkh, Ras Righteous. Peace and love to you, my brother.
Yes, blessed love.